Hey everyone.
Hello.
Thanks for coming. This talk is about productivity, reliability, and testability in a PowerPoint presentation that is going crazy. Productivity, reliability, and testability in an enterprise environment. My name is Lincoln Baxter, and this is Paul Backer. I'm the Forge project lead, and he is the first most awesome Forge committer that we had. We're also pleased to be joined by Ivanov, who's in our front row here. He's another Forge committer, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask us afterwards. And we'll also be glad to take your questions throughout the talk. So, what's this about? Why are we here? Why'd you come into this room today? I'm hoping you came into this room because getting started sucks. Every time we have to learn a new technology, we go through the same process. First, there's dread. Maybe excitement. And then there's delay. Or maybe we like getting right into something. But there's this process that we all go through every time where we have to sort of like pick up from the ground these things that we're not really familiar with. We have to sort out where it fits in our perspective of what we already understand about technology, and then put those pieces together. And you know, that's the learning curve, right? That's what happens when you pick up anything new. It doesn't even relate to technology. This is everything in our lives. Getting started sucks. Integrating stuff is hard. We work with a lot of technologies today. We're all here at Java 1, but we don't just use Java. We use Linux, we use Bash, we use Grails, we use HTML, CSS. We use all these different kinds of things. We use security frameworks, we use database frameworks. This is all stuff that we have to put together to make a fully functional, successful application. And when we integrate things, we go through that same getting started process. New technology comes in, we have to learn it, we have to pick it up, and that takes time. I personally enjoy that time, but I'm a little weird. Remembering stuff is hard. Even the things that we've already learned, we've already gotten started, we've already integrated. We go through, you know, maybe we have tasks we have to do every day to keep our applications up to date. We have to run a few procedures to make sure that our reports are generated. And we take a week off. We take 2 weeks off, and we come back to that technology, and we have to remember how to do it. And that can be hard. Sometimes we forget what we've been doing for years. It doesn't take very long. And repetitive tasks, these things we have to remember over and over and over again, these things we have to do every day, are frustrating. They're annoying. They are quickly something that becomes a burden. It's like the boilerplate code that we write in our applications. We would really love to have a framework that would make it so that we write like one line of code and our whole application's there. But we don't do that, so we have these repetitive tasks we have to do every day. And it makes us crazy. Some of us are already crazy, like Paul.
Yeah.
But what do we do about it? How do we remember how to do things? How do we learn how to use a new technology? Where do you go? No audience participation today? Samples and tutorials. Perfect. Where do you find those? Okay, from the people that support the framework. And how do you find those documents? Google, right. We go to Google. We start typing something in.
Oh, hold on a second. I mean, I'm not feeling like going down this road once again. And well, we want to start programming. You know, we want to start making our stuff work. And we're going back to Google once again, and then we start copy pasting first our Maven configuration, then our Java application configuration. And I don't want to do that stuff all over again. There must be something better, isn't there?
I don't know. I think so. But we're not going to use Google today. That's absolutely out of the question. Today we're going to use project JBoss Forge, and it is a member of the JBoss community. This is a project that I'm very excited about. Obviously, I'm the project lead. And it's going to help us with getting started, getting integrated, getting mental, so remembering things, and also getting efficient, so taking care of the repetitive tasks, even if it's something that this tool is not ever designed for or intended to do. It can help us with all these things, and we're going to see that today. So let's get started.
Awesome. So what shall we do? I would say let's start off with just creating a project from scratch, and well, let's start creating a Java application. Can we do that?
Yeah, sure. So Forge can help us with that. As opposed to going up to the new project wizard and like typing a whole bunch of things in here, we can just come down to the Forge console and we can say Forge new project named, and we're going to call this tracker. We're going to make a task tracking application today. Hit enter, and Forge spits out a project. Here it is in Eclipse.
Okay, that looks easy enough, but I mean, I want to use Maven because that's what we're standardized on, and well, we have to integrate with other stuff later on. So, is it still using Maven?
Absolutely. If you notice down here in the bottom of the project, we have a Maven POM file. But let me first show you what's up here. We have the default Maven main folder, the test folder, test resources, the dependencies of which we have none yet, and the POM file, if we look at that, is just a basic POM file. It comes with the JBoss Nexus repository by default. We have to put a few plugs in there. But other than that, it's just a completely clean POM file.
But isn't this basically what a Maven archetype can do for us?
Yeah, we could use an archetype, but well, the problem with archetypes is you run it once and it's done, right?
Right.
And oftentimes you get this like big dump of code into your like upfront project, and you're not really sure what's there, and you have to go through and figure out which things you want to take out of the archetype once it's generated so that you can just get down to the stuff that you really need. And Forge lets you just sort of start from something that's basic, or even start from an existing project that you've got and add in the pieces of functionality that you need as you go to handle those integrations.
So let's try that. I would like to have a JSF web application. Just go the Java route and well, let's make it a web application.
We want a web application? Sure. So if we want to make a web application, Forge can do that for us. It comes with a feature called the scaffold, and the scaffold is something that's going to take care of basically creating your fully functional, most basic working Java EE application. So we run the scaffold setup command, and this is an extension point in Forge, so if we wanted to, we could use a scaffold that wasn't JSF, but in this case, we're just going to go with the default and show you what's there in the built-in Forge. So it's going to ask us a few questions. It's noticing that, hey, you're actually working in a jar project right now, and you're about to be changing that into a WAR file, so do you really want to make this change? Forge doesn't do anything without your permission, but it can also assume some sensible things because it's actually looking at the project, it's parsing, it's understanding what you've got there, and trying to figure out what to do for you. So we're going to hit yes, and it asks us, okay, well now we need to install the Java EE APIs because this is a Java EE application. So we're just going to pick the most recent version of those APIs, and you'll notice that that's a JBoss spec dependency there, but there's nothing JBoss specific about that. It's just the Java EE APIs so that everyone can consume them from Maven. Not all of the APIs are uploaded from the JCP specification, so we've taken care of like bundling those together into one thing that you can include to have all of them together. And there we are. Now we have a web application with a few error pages, and we have now Hibernate, we have EJB, we have CDI, Servlet, all of these things. JSF are set up for us, and we haven't had to worry about going out and finding which dependencies to include. Forge has done that for us.
So now we just have a basic project doing Java stuff, just, well, plain Java. There's nothing fancy or framework related in there. And did all the Maven stuff, and for the rest it's still pretty much empty, right? Because, well, we didn't write any code yet.
Right. So we don't really have anything in here yet.
So I would say let's add some, well, JPA related stuff. I want some entities.
Okay.
But, well, I already feel, well, it's difficult because we have to write a persistent.xml, and I always forget how it looks like exactly for the Eclipse link or for Hibernate, for example. Well, stop there. Can't Forge that do that for us? No, just stop there.
Yeah, so Forge comes with a bunch of Java EE plugins to help us get started in the whole process, to help us configure the various Java EE specifications. In this case, we can use the persistence plugin, and it's going to walk us through the setup process. So I'm just pressing tab here, and it's telling us we have all these different providers. Which one do you want to use? In this case, we're going to use Hibernate because we know we're going to be running this on JBoss Application Server 7, which is lightning fast. And it's also going to ask us, do you want to use the new JPA2 meta model specification? This lets you use the type safe criteria API. And how many of you guys have tried to set that up? Like the type safe criteria? What was your experience with that? Right. Not too bad. Well, Forge can do that for us. We're not going to do that today. And it's also asking, we noticed you're using Hibernate. Do you want to use the Hibernate specific APIs like the formula annotation would be available if we did this, and the various other Hibernate specific things. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to stick with straight up Java EE. So here is our persistence XML file configured for Hibernate and for the JBoss AS data source with a few default properties so that we can see the SQL in the console and that it's formatted so we can see what's happening nicely.
Okay, so before we move on, I'm just wondering, I see this nice integration into Eclipse. Is it just about Eclipse or?
No, so actually if we wanted to, we could run Forge in console. It's completely standalone. You don't need to require an IDE. We're actually trying to get integrations into like NetBeans and IntelliJ, but right now we just have Eclipse because that's who the JBoss Tools project is bundling Forge there. We're investing some time to make that a little more nice for people.
Right, because it's just a Maven project, I can use it in whatever IDE I would like.
Right.
Cool.
So here's Forge running in the terminal.
Okay, so we've got persistent.xml set up. That's nice. Could Forge help us running some entities?
Yeah, sure. So, we're going to be building a task tracking application. So, we'll go with like the user or the task, and we'll just be able to make some basic relationships there, so that users can have tasks and we can enter things and keep track of what people are doing when. So we can turn to the entity command, and we just say entity named user. Hit enter. It's going to ask us where do you want to put this. In this case, we're just going to use the default because we don't really have a set convention that we need to adhere to, but if you had an application that you were adding a JPA entity to, you could specify your own package, obviously. And then we'll add a field to this string and call it the name. And there's our string, and we have getters and setters that were also created for us. So I guess we'll go ahead and create the task object as well. Entity named task. And it sees that we already picked this package, so it doesn't ask us that question again. It's learned from what we've told it. And we just go back to the field command, string named description. What are we actually doing? And then field temporal this time, and we're going to make it a date, and we're going to call this due. And then, as you can see, it's handling putting the annotation on this for us. Minor optimization, but things that could be, inconvenient. You got to type the field, you got to make the getters and setters, make sure the annotation's in the right place. And then the last field here we're going to do is just a Boolean, and we're going to say whether or not this task is completed or not.
And then I guess we should go back to the user and make a relationship between user and task.
Right. So we're going to go back into the user here, and now we're going to set up the relationship between these two objects. We turn to the field command. One user generally has many tasks, and we're going to call those tasks. We could actually build an inverse relationship here, but since we don't really care to know which task has which user, we can find that from the user, drop down like, this is all the tasks user has, we're just going to ignore that. But as you can see here, Forge is providing us tab completion so we can find the type that we want and handle all the imports for us. Here's our one-to-many relationship. It's already put it into a set and generated the getters and setters for us.
So I'm just started to wonder, as you do a lot of typing on the Forge command line, and we're still using Eclipse. Can I just edit my entities or other code in Eclipse?
Mm-hmm, sure. So let's go back to the task, actually. And we'll take this completed field, and let's do a refactoring. We're going to call it, complete. We'll just get rid of the D. So is this task complete? And if we look at Forge, this is what Forge understands about this entity. I just LS'd this entity, and we can see we have all the fields here. So here's due, description, yep, there it is, complete. So we are in sync. And if I change it back to completed, We did not update the getters. Oh, it did update the getters and setters. So when we do another ls, we should see completed.
So I can just switch between using my ID and using Forge whenever I want.
Yeah, you can edit files. You can do it in text editor if you want. Doesn't matter. Forge is going to keep going through your sources to make sure it has the most up-to-date information.
Nice. Okay, so we've got our entities right now. And I've been looking at the Ruby on Rails guys, for example, and what I have is this really nice scaffolding functionality where I can just say, well, I've got some database tables or some entities, and give me a user interface. And of course, this isn't a full application, but at least it's some basic CRUD functionality. Mm-hmm. Can we do that?
Yeah, sure. So since we already used the scaffold to set this up, we don't have to run that again. If you were running this on an existing project, you would just go through these same steps. You would point Forge at your entities, and you would say Forge scaffold from entity, use tab completion to find what you want, and in this case we're going to use the wildcard to generate a user interface for all of our domain objects. It's going to ask us, do we want to overwrite a few files that it created for the index that it set up for us when we installed the scaffold, and then it goes ahead and generates the XHTML Java server faces, because that's the scaffold we're using, files, and puts those into our deployed resources. So we can go in here, see, now we have a user and task folder here, and these are just plain JSF views. This is what the code that you would have written yourself to get this functionality.
Oh, just plain Java EE.
Mm-hmm, just plain Java EE code.
Okay, so it looks like we have some nice code here. Could we just run it on an application server?
Yeah, sure. Let's see what we got. Let's drag it here to the JBoss AS lightning fast server. And it is deployed right now. Okay, so go back over to Chrome here, localhost 8080. This was what, tracker? There's our application.
Great, and I see we have a task and a user. Can you just, show us what we got?
Yep, so here's the task. Here's the users. Let's go ahead and add a user here. Who wants to volunteer?
Okay, I will.
Paul? All right.
Yeah, sure.
Create Paul here. And we'll save you. And then let's go ahead, give you a new task. Oh, did we not? Right, we don't have a relationship from tasks. Interesting. I think I generated that relationship backwards.
Yeah, I think so too. Glad you messed that up.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so what we basically have is we have just some CRUD functionality based on our entities, and we didn't write a line of code yet. And of course, if we want to have our own functionality, we just start writing our own code, but it's all basic Java EE, so it's nothing special there.
Right, so
and at least Forge helped us getting started, setting up Maven stuff, and getting all the dependencies in, getting the configuration files, etc., etc.
Right. So if I had put the task on the relationship in the correct direction, we would have been able to add the task directly from Paul. But since I didn't do that, I had to create the task and then add it to Paul later.
Okay, that's awesome. So we've got our application deployed, but I'm not really interested in just CRUD functionality. What I want in the end is just RESTful web services. Mm-hmm. And we have our entities. Can't we just create a REST endpoint on top of that entities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Forge knows how to create RESTful endpoints as well. It's similar to the scaffold. You just use the REST command. In this case, we're going to use tab, and it looks like setup is the only thing we can do because we haven't actually installed REST into our application yet. So let's just open up the web.xml file so we can see what Forge is doing here. Actually, no, sorry. Let's not use web.xml. Let's make a Java
application class
to activate REST.
Yeah.
Because this is servlet 3, we don't have to use web.xml anymore. We can just do this all from annotations. So we're going to use the application class activator. Hit enter. Forge is going to ask us what root path do we want to serve all of our endpoints from. We'll just go with the default REST, and let's say com.example.tracker is where we want to put our application class. And I'll go over here, and there it is.
So this is just a standard JAX-RS application class that configures and turns on JAX REST.
Right.
Cool.
So now that we have REST set up, we can go ahead and say REST. We now have another command available to us. This is the endpoint from entity command, very similar to the scaffold from entity command. And we're going to pick XML, and then we're going to go with the same two entities. Hit enter, and we've generated a few endpoints. You can see what we've got over here. It's just a REST endpoint with some post, delete, get, put, the CRUD operations for REST endpoints. So let's go ahead and see if this actually is going to work for us. So we have to republish because we've added some new services to our application. And that's done, lightning fast. I'm going to laugh every time I say that. Let's go ahead and add a task because we got to do that first. Get something done. Do yesterday. Save it. And then we'll add Paul again. And add him that task. Save. Now, if we go to the endpoint URL that we set up, we should be able to access this data. So let's copy this. Go to REST, and then user. There we are.
Excellent. Oh, yeah, great. So we've got our basic application, well, more or less working. But there's one other technology that I really like, and I've seen it before. And it's called Arquillian, and it enables us to do in-container integration tests. Mm-hmm. And what I didn't like about Arquillian is it's very hard to set up because you have to go to the documentation, and according to the application server that you're using, you have to copy a bunch of XML, pull in a lot of dependencies in your Maven configuration, and set all that up. So could Forge help us with that?
Yeah, sure. Before we show what Forge does, I'm just going to go over to Arquillian's website real quick and show what that experience looks like. If we get started, this is the Getting Started guide for Arquillian.
And I actually wrote that, and it was no fun.
That's a lot of stuff. I mean, it's a very well-written guide. If you follow it step by step, you will have a completely successful application. But we can definitely help make this better. So Forge not only comes with this built-in functionality, but we also have the concept of plugins, where you can extend and add new integrations into Forge so that you can help set up your applications.
Okay, so but how would we find a plugin?
Well,
how do we know?
We want to do testing, right?
Yeah.
So we can use Forge find plugin test. It's going to go out to the Forge Central plugin repository, and we see here that we have, in this case, the Arquillian plugin written by you.
Oh yeah, I remember I did something like that.
And we can just install that using the Forge install plugin command and hit enter. What Forge does, actually, anyone can write a plugin. It's completely open. We didn't want to make some proprietary format, you need to use some weird repository. Forge uses GitHub. When you write a plugin, it's just a Maven project. It's just a CDI project like we have been using on all of our Java EE6 projects. And it's using the same programming model that you're very familiar with if you've done any Java EE programming. You push your plugin out onto a GitHub repository, you point Forge at that, and it can install it. And that's just one option of installing plugins, but you can also install from disk or whatever, but the central repository works on GitHub. You can put your repositories up there. You can share them with everyone. So now we have the Arquillian plugin installed, and we can run the setup. And we know we're using JBoss AS7.
Because the problem with Arquillian is that it's there's a specific implementation for each kind of container, so you need Maven configuration for each different container.
Mm-hmm. And this is why that guide is so long, is because there's so many different containers that you can set up, and it needs to go through all the different options. But we're just going to pick JBoss AS7, and Forge is going to step us through that process in a little more streamlined manner. Here, it's asking what version of Arquillian do we want. We're going to pick the most recent. And then this is JUnit. And now, which version of AS7 are we using? We're using 7.1.1 final, so we'll pick number 15. And we are done. Arquillian set up.
Right. Can you actually show the pom.xml?
Sure.
because there should be some new dependencies and there should be some Maven profile.
Sure. So the POM has CDI, JUnit, which we just added, Hibernate, and here's Arquillian. And down here we have the profile for JBoss AS7 remote. If we look at the POM file, we can see that we actually added the Arquillian BOM file. And this is the same thing that you do in the guides. We picked JUnit, the Arquillian container, and we added a profile for our JBoss AS remote 7.
Very cool. So let's start running tests. Well,
what if we
how
wanted,
did that work?
What if we wanted a different container?
Yeah, sure. Well, maybe I would like to test in Glassfish also. So you don't do Glassfish, right? Okay. What about a different JBoss version?
So we can run Arquillian setup again, and we can pick, in this case, yeah, sure, why not? Glassfish, remote, free one. Again, we go out, pick the version of the Arquillian adapter for Glassfish, hit enter, and our POM file should be updated. Did you know something that I shouldn't have done?
No.
But anyway, we can just go ahead and work with AS7.
Yeah, sure. So I would like to have some tests, and I remember if you have if you want to write an Arquillian test, you have to create a deployment method, and I always forget the syntax. So can we just generate one?
Mm-hmm. So now that we have the Arquillian plugin installed, we can use Arquillian create test and pick the class that we would like to test. In this case, let's go with one of our REST endpoints. Let's pick the task endpoint because that one's pretty straightforward. And we're going to enable JPA because we know we want to go to the database and do database testing as well. So now we have task endpoint test. And we've already got a deployment method, which is going to add persistence XML to the Arquillian deployment. For those of you who are not familiar with Arquillian, it uses the concept of micro deployments. It takes some or all of the application source files, bundles them up into a jar file, deploys that onto a running server, and then runs the tests. So we can pick and choose what we want to add. In this case, we're going to add the persistence XML file. We're going to add the task endpoint class, and we also have to ask the task. We also have to add the task class. Otherwise, we'll have a no class def found exception when this jar file gets deployed to the server. Is there anything else we need?
No, I think we're good to go. So let's write a test.
All right, so let's run this test. Forge uses the test command, and we're going to run through and see a huge success. Ooh, build failed.
Well, I have an idea why this might have failed, because we didn't actually enable the Maven profile for JBoss AS7.
Right. So because we need to tell Arquillian which container to deploy to, we're going to pick JBoss AS remote 7, hit enter, and this time we should have a better result, right?
Yeah, let's take a look.
So if you only have one profile, it doesn't make it default.
Good point.
Right. Well, which actually makes sense because you don't always want that stuff in your class pod while not testing.
Right. So here
I'm partly happy. I mean, we have test success, but I want green bars because I don't like looking at Maven output. Can we just run this from Eclipse?
Sure, but why don't we actually make it test a little more than just dependency injection?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So let's go ahead and create a new test method. Test create task. We'll go ahead and say task t equals new task. And then we're going to use our task endpoint and create that. This would be just like if someone had called our REST web service. And then once this is done, we should be able to assert that these two are equal, that there is an ID that's been added to this task. It starts off at 0. Oops. But once we've created it, we should have an ID. And let's go ahead and assert up here that the ID is 0. And now, because you wanted a green bar, right?
Yeah, I want a green bar.
All right, let's just run this in Eclipse. run as JUnit test, do this every day. Ooh, and we had a problem. I'm guessing this is probably that same problem we ran into with Forge.
Oh yeah, because we temporarily enabled the Maven profile in Maven, but we didn't actually do that in Eclipse.
So if we rerun this test now, after we update our profile, oh, right, it's null, it's not 0. Tests are already winning for us.
Yep.
And there we go.
Yeah, green bar.
Green bar.
But you should add a log for J configuration too.
Yeah, so that we didn't have this warning here. But all the valuable information is actually in the server console.
Okay, awesome. So we have Arquillian set up. Well, there were some other nice plugins that I've seen before, and I think you wrote them actually. There's some rewrite functionality that we can use on JSF to have URL rewriting. It's not that difficult to set up, but I keep on forgetting it because you just do it once in a project. So can Forge help?
Yeah, sure. So what Paul wants to do is he wants to clean up our URL to get rid of these XHTML files. We don't really want to reveal to people that we're using JSF in our application. So there's a tool called OCPsoft Rewrite, which is a rewrite filter. And Forge can help us get that set up and streamlined. We're just going to do that same thing. We're going to do Forge, find plugin. In this case, let's just search for rewriting and see what we've got out there. Okay, we've got Pretty Faces and Rewrite. We're going to go with Rewrite today. Let's install plugin Rewrite. We'll just take the latest version. And once this is done, it's going to again be able to step us through this process of integration where we would normally have had to go out to the web. In this case, we could just go to OCPsoft's website and go to the Rewrite project. And there's a pretty good guide there. Pretty straightforward. It's 5 steps. But Forge can still make that easier for us. So here we're just installing from the repository again through GitHub. It downloads all the files. And because this is a Maven project, Forge knows how to build it. It takes the artifacts and packages that up as a plugin. And in a second, we should have our prompt back. I think we're experiencing some conference internet here.
Never fails.
You can do it. All right.
So maybe we should kill this and
maybe I can just start it up again. All right. All right, there we go. All right, so when Forge starts up again, we should have access to the Rewrite plugin, and then we can do our integration.
Your best practice would do first. I mean, nobody ever gets their first time engineering. Is it all right? 25 maybe, observe that from your team. That's not true engineering in it to be able to rebuild certain things.
So your question is what
Like you made a mistake or something, you got your relationships wrong, right? You built
Oh, right.
your classes, you built your web front end. So they're like just sort of best practices where they
Yeah, I
yourself too far without,
could have just gone back and fixed the change and told it to build the UI again.
so it wouldn't be a big change to your UIs. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, right. So because round-tripping UI is a little more difficult, it is going to obliterate those changes. But that's like it provides you templates. So if you change the templates, if you go out too far outside of the box of the Forge generated scaffolding, then you're not going to be able to go back and rerun the scaffold command because you'll lose that. But we just wanted to get you to a place where you can take this and run with it. That's the primary goal.
I think the general problem with scaffolding, that, well, it gets you started quickly, but after that, well, you're on your own again. And
Why would you pick this over, let's say, a Rue or something else? Do you have any pros and cons?
well, Rue is much more Spring focused. So if you're in the Spring area, well, then probably Rue is a better option. But if you're in more on the Java side, or well, in general, a non-Spring side, then well, I think Forge does better because there are more plugins which are not so integrated to Spring. But the concepts are somewhat similar.
Well, I got to choose. Why would I pick that Spring over this?
Why would you pick
Why would I
between?
pick this over Spring?
It just depends on what you want to do. I mean, if you want to use a Spring Rue application, use Spring Rue. If you want to use Java EE and integrate other technologies, there's actually a Spring plugin for this. If we wanted to, we can just do Spring setup, and then you can set up MVC and all that kind of stuff too. So, like I said, Forge is not really tied to a specific technology. It's whatever you've got plugins for. We were actually playing around with writing Rue in Forge, because Forge is like a technology superset of Rue. You could just implement Rue with Forge. But Forge is focused on basically the technology integration problem, making it possible for people to go out and streamline the getting started and configuration process for any technology.
Superset, I think of it as superset.
Oh,
Superset.
what's that?
Why do you say it was superset of Rue?
From a core standpoint, Rue is more focused on pure Spring and Spring integrations, but Forge is focused on being an extendable tool that you can use to do anything.
That answers actually
Question?
Yeah, different question. Okay, so I saw it looks, parse is essentially your .xml file, but if I've made changes to my .xml, say I've got a standard repository, so other stuff, does any of that get messed up or lost when I add some additional scaffolding, additional anything at all?
Absolutely not. So Forge will go ahead, it sees what you've got there, it respects everything you've already got set up, and if it sees a conflict, it'll actually ask you what you would like to do, whether you would like to overwrite the previous version or use the new version that Forge wants to install.
Similar with Java code, I'm guessing there's no concept of like protected areas or anything like that.
Right.
Code vector, it's just you want to overwrite this or not.
But
So-
it's not an issue for the POM file and most of the configuration files, because that's much easier to parse and much easier to, well, just understand so you can do the writing.
Right, and if you want, I can show you that. So here we're going to set up rewrite, and I'm going to go with the latest version. Actually, no, sorry. Let's pick the version 105 final, so I can show you, changing the POM file. Here, we've added our dependency for rewrite, and we have the version up here. We can just go ahead and change the version to 1.0 final, save that, and then if we go into rewrite, setup, it still says that rewrite is installed. We're still good. So it's reprocessed that information and done what we want. So let's go ahead and continue. We're going to create a simple rewrite configuration so we can get rid of our nasty URLs. We'll go ahead and put this in the base package, and we'll just call it rewrite config. Hit enter, and our class up here, rewrite config, is right there.
So maybe we can add a basic rule to just show that it works.
So notice here we already have this configuration provider. This is how the configuration in rewrite is set up. It's done that for us, and now we can just start writing our rules. So we can just add rule. We're going to join the root URL to the faces internal resource, index.xhtml, and since we're changing this URL, we don't want the old links to continue sending people there. So we want to actually fix it if someone tries to access this now out-of-date link, and we're going to send them to the new place using inbound correction. So if I go back to our application, I believe I do not need to redeploy this. If I hit enter again here, we should be sent back to the new URL. Nope, I need to redeploy. Okay, we saw rewrite start up that time. There we go. Now if we look at all of the links on the page, they've all been updated. If you look at the bottom left there, to use the new address. And we could go ahead and add these for the other pages just as easily. But do we want to show some other stuff?
Well, I think I've seen enough about configuring frameworks and configuring Yavi and etc. But well, there's some other kind of configuration that you often need on projects. Like our new boss, he wants us to use tools like checkstyle and findbugs just to do some code quality measurements. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I like those tools, but it's a pain in the ass to just set up because you need the Maven plugins and there's a lot of configuration involved. So that's kind of complicated. Is it possible there's a plugin for that in Forge?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I already have that one installed. In this case, I think it's the code quality plugin. And again, we just go through the setup process. We're going to do check style. And if we open up our POM here, we can see what's going to happen. We can go with the version 13, and then the newest version of the site plugin. We look down here. Now we have the Maven site plugin with check style.
Right, because in Maven 3 you first need a site plugin, and when you use the site command, in that you can use plugins again to configure what exactly it should do.
Right.
Those versions it populates from like a remote repository query, or is it something within the plugin itself that knows what version you have?
So we're actually going to get to see that, how Forge resolves versions in just a moment, but it is going out to the repositories you've configured in your POM hierarchy.
Awesome. Maybe we can we also add another plugin, code checking plugin, maybe findbugs?
Sure.
Because I just want to see if it doesn't mess up the side plugin.
Let's just see what we got here. There's our check
All right,
style
you already
results.
run it.
Yeah.
Oh, that was easy.
So, yeah, if we wanted to add another tool, we could probably add, findbugs. Is that what you wanted?
Sure.
36. And
let's take a look at the POM file again.
POM file has been updated, and the site plugin has been updated to use now both checkstyle and findbugs. So we got to keep our existing configuration.
Awesome, and I saw there's a whole list of plugins available here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, very cool. I've started to be wondering that, there are so many plugins and there seems to be a plugin for everything. Wouldn't it be difficult to just write a plugin myself?
Well, so I guess we could just take a look at that. We got about 20 minutes left. Let's make a new plugin. I think it's pretty much the same process. We go ahead and set up a new project.
What shall we do? Let's take a plugin that's for unit testing that sets up EasyMock for us.
Okay, so a plugin that sets up EasyMock. So this is going to go out. I guess it needs to find the dependency and then add that to the POM file?
Yeah, exactly, and maybe later on generate some test code.
All right. So EasyMock, new project named EasyMock, and like all the other technology integrations in Forge, this one comes built in. We just do plugin setup, and it's going to go ahead and ask us which version of the APIs we want to use, which version of the Forge APIs we want to use. In this case, the latest version.
So you actually just created a new project.
Mm-hmm. And I just created a new plugin project.
Right, and a plugin project is basically just another Maven project.
Mm-hmm. Nothing special about it. Here's the POM file. All standard. So if we wanted to make a new plugin, we can go back to our plugins command, and we have the new plugin command available to us now that the APIs have been installed and Forge understands that this is a plugin project. Forge new plugin named, in this case, we'll call it EasyMock. And we go up here. Here's our plugin. And we also have a test case that's been generated for us so that we can see the basic functionality and just how this plugin would be interacted with, just to get people started if they're not already familiar with the shell API and how to interact with that.
Right, so maybe you should take a look at this code. There's some annotations I see. To start with, there's an @alias annotation. What does that do?
So the alias annotation, that is telling Forge The name of this command is EasyMock. When you type it in the command line, that's how it does auto-completion. That's how it's going to show up when you actually list all of the commands out. So if I went back to Forge here and press Tab without anything here, this is where EasyMock would show up.
Okay, cool. And then we just have to implement the plugin interface, and I see some add injects. Is that just basic CDI?
Yeah,
like
so
you know from server-side programming?
Forge is implemented entirely using CDI, the CDI programming model. You can create new beans, you can inject them, use that whole design to create Forge plugins. And that's even how you access Forge's internal APIs that it exposes to plugins.
Cool. So I've seen you using the setup command on most plugins. So maybe we can create a setup command that actually installs the EasyMock dependencies to the Maven POM file.
Sure. So to get the setup command, we use the setup command annotation, and we're going to put that on a new command method, public void, whatever, or let's just call it, do setup or whatever. Hit enter, and so we need to what? We need to install the dependency.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So to install a dependency, we're going to go out to the Forge APIs. We're going to ask for an instance of the dependency installer. The dependency installer is how you add things to the POM file. It takes care of querying for what versions are available. It looks at the repositories in the POM file, and that's how you get access to all of the Maven repositories. So we're going to do installer, and when we set up, we're just going to do installer dot install. Oh, but we also need an instance of the project. So we're going to ask Forge to give us the project that we're currently working on. Add that, and then we need the dependency that we're working on. So we'll use the dependency builder to create a new instance of what, org EasyMock? EasyMock?
EasyMock, yeah. That is just Maven coordinates. Do we have to specify anything about a version here?
No, because again, it's going to do that version query. So Forge is going to go out and look what's available to us, and then it'll ask us which version we want to install when we run this.
Right, great. Can we actually install this into Forge and just try it out?
Sure. So let's go back to the root of the project, and then just say Forge install me from sources. Oops, sorry, wrong command. Forge source plugin. It does a build. In this case, it doesn't have to go out to GitHub because all the sources are local, and we have a success. Hopefully we start up again this time. Good. Now we should be able to run the EasyMock command.
Nice. So, well, let's execute it and see what happens.
Sure.
Oh yeah, there's a list of versions. So this actually came from the Maven remote repositories, and just get a version right from there.
Yep.
Nice.
So we hit enter, and now we see that Forge has updated our POM file, and we can go in and confirm. There's EasyMock.
And that was just basically one line of code to get this working.
Yep. To do
Awesome.
that, that's all we had to do.
Okay, let's try something more difficult then. I would like to have a command in our new plugin that can actually generate a test class for us.
Okay. Well, just so we make sure we don't misuse this plugin, let's add this project scoped annotation, which means that you can only use this if you're currently working on a project, because I don't think this really makes much sense outside of that. Because we're going to be asking the project to get us sources, and if you ran this just sort of like out in the open, you'd get an error, and nobody likes errors, right? So that's actually going to do two things. It's going to prevent people from running this command without a project. So I could actually go back into my home directory here, and I could run EasyMock. And I'm pretty sure we're going to get an exception if I run the setup command, because there's no project active. So that's what this is going to prevent. So let's go ahead and now add this method that's going to do our setup. We want to generate a test class?
Yes, and when it generates a test class, I want to make sure that the name of the new test class is just not a random name, but I want it to be named like the test we are going to test, prepended with test, and that should be it. So it does mean we need some input from the user, because we have to ask the user, what class do you want to test?
Right. So to get input from the users, now we specify some options for our command. In this case, we want the test class, so we're going to ask for the test class, or the class under test, right?
Yeah, sounds good.
And then this is probably something that's important for running this command, so we'll make it required. And that can actually be, we like this auto-completion that we've been seeing, right?
Yeah, that would be awesome.
So we can actually get auto-completion by using the prompt type and tell it that we're looking for a Java class.
So that is why actually look at our project, look for Java classes, and just give us that is autocomplete options.
Right, and why do I have, oh yeah, okay, so I need to say what this variable is called. And Forge is actually going, we could just ask for a string here. But since we want, oops, that's what's wrong.
Yeah, but we don't just want a name of the class, we also want like package information and stuff like that. So.
Right, so we want to be able to actually inspect what's in the class.
Yep.
In that case, let's use a Java resource. And Forge is going to give us a handle to that source file in the project, and we'll be able to get more information out of it.
So a Java resource is more or less just a file?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And can we introspect that, like something like reflection-like?
Yeah, so we can actually ask Forge to parse that.
Okay.
And get the Java source from that class, or from that file. And once we have a handle of the source, we can go ahead and say, we can modify it, we can get annotations, imports, get the package, we can check to see if imports are there, we can see if it has methods, if it's public, private, protected, all that kind of stuff. So basically full introspection of this class.
Nice, okay. So, but we want to use this information to actually create a new class, so let's start creating a new class.
All right, so to create a new class, we go to the Java parser API, and we say create. In this case, we know we want a class because it's going to be a JUnit test. And
it should have a name.
It probably needs a name, yeah. So we'll
and the name should be, well, we should get a name from the test under class.
All right, so we want to make it like class under test, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right, so we go to the source of our class under test and get the name and add test to it.
Okay, and I think it should be in the same package as the other class.
Right, so again, we go to source, get package, and there we are. And we probably want a new method, right? A test method?
Yeah, probably. It would be nice to have, well, like an empty setup method.
Okay.
With add before annotation on top of it.
All right, so let's go ahead and add a method to this new test class. We'll call it init. And then we'll add an annotation to it. And that annotation is going to be org JUnit before.
Capital.
And actually, if I wanted to, I could probably just go here and add JUnit to my dependencies, right? So I could go here, where are my dependencies?
So you could write it in a type-safe way.
Yeah, so let's just use the type-safe way of doing this. Dependency. Everybody is org.junit, and then artifact ID, JUnit, version 4.
Able to put it in a project, or are you going to put it in an app, like source test Java versus the app class under test?
Oh, so the question is, are we going to put the test class in the same actual folder as the source file?
Could you also put it in the project?
Good question. We'll see that in just a sec. So now that I have, do I not have the right JUnit dependency? There we go. All right, so let's change this to the actual before annotation, so we can do this in a nice type-safe, refactorable way. And now, as you were asking, hang on a second. Let's go ahead and add a body to this too.
Yeah, it should just be an empty body, but
Yeah, all right, so this method's not going to do anything.
Okay, so this is basically a description of the new class. We should probably save it somewhere.
All right, so let's go
and
back.
write it to a file.
Let's go ahead, and this is the test source. So we want to put this file, like you said, in the appropriate Maven package, so source test Java instead of source main Java. So we're going to ask Forge now to inspect our project. We have a handle of the project already, and using this concept of facets, we can say, get the facet that represents the Java resources. So we can get the Java, is Java source facet? Yeah, Java source facet dot class, and then now we can actually just save this test source into the right package, and it's going to use the introspection API to see where that class, what that class is packaged in, and it's just going to make a new file and save it there.
Cool. Okay, so let's try it out.
All right. So let's go ahead and run this. Install this plugin again. Oh, we have a problem. All right, apparently we don't have JUnit today. So let's just do this the other way. And we'll sacrifice our type safety in favor of the Oracle Internet. Reinstall. And once this is running, let's just make a new class so we can see how this works, because we already have a test class in our project. Let's not make another test class. We'll call this, oh, come on. We'll call this example class. It's just empty. And we are going to make a new test. So we have the easy mock. We already have it set up, so let's make a new test. Class under test. Here's our tab completion. And now we've got example class. Hit enter. There's our test.
Very cool. So you can see it's, well, just basically a few minutes of work to get started with writing your own plugins. And we see the whole community doing that. There's a bunch of plugins for all kind of frameworks and technologies that's out there. That's pretty cool. We have 3 minutes left, so let's wrap this up and have some time for questions.
Alrighty. So, we did a bunch of things today. What just happened? So, we used plugins. Forge is all about plugins. If there's not a plugin that does something that you want, as you saw, it's pretty straightforward to get started in making one, but it also comes with a strong set of plugins right out of the box to help you get set up with Java EE, Spring, a whole bunch of technologies. There's things that I've written that other people have written for other third-party libraries. We really want to solve this problem of the getting started and getting integrated thing. That's what Forge is all about. So if you want a plugin, see if it's there. If it's not there, add it. Get your name out there, put it into the repository. It's a great opportunity. We wrote plugins. Plugins have a very nice architecture for introspecting the project with very well-defined chunks of functionality, I guess, called the facets, like we saw, the Java resource facet. That's Forge's way of saying, this piece of functionality is in this project. If I'm there, then you can do anything you want that I provide. So facets provide functionality for a specific set of features. And plugins can depend on facets. Facets can depend on other facets. And you can build up a whole network of really actually complicated operations in a very nicely encapsulated way. We ate plugins. They're delicious. And that's an empty slide. Is that the end? Absolutely not. This is the beginning, hopefully, of your adventure with Forge. Thank you all for joining us. Some feedback that we've gotten from various people. Forge is the eclipse of command shells. This guy apparently loves Forge, and it's much easier than writing Maven plugins. It takes the cruft out of CRUD. We can just get something really simple up there really quickly for those little one-off applications that we make, or if you want to start something more complicated and integrate technology. And distributing plugins with Git really makes it available for everyone. Like, this is a totally open project. We want to just get this out there and get everyone involved. And if you want more information, these are the references from the talk. But also, please check out the Arquillian Getting Started guide if you want to learn more about Arquillian. If you want to learn about how to use JBoss technologies, check out the JBoss Developer Framework. There's a whole lot of information on getting started there, and they're focused on Forge. And there's, of course, on the Forge website, an entire guide dedicated to writing plugins to help step you through the entire process. So please stay in the loop. Join us. We want to hear your feedback. Thanks for coming.